Brain up, please. And roll sound.
Line 6, take one.
Background action. Action.
Filming so hard. The hours, the being in the sunshine it's really. I mean, people don't realise just how hard it is. No, really. I mean, it's not really very difficult at all being in the sunshine in the south of France. To be honest, it's fun.
One of the primary motivations why Simon McBurney set the story in France was because we wanted to put Mr. Bean in an environment where talk was not expected, because we decided to send him to France with no real knowledge of French. And so inevitably the way that he dealt with every situation he would have to deal with in a relatively silent way.
Gracias.
My father had an uncle called Uncle Bob, who was incredibly British, and he used to say to my father, it's incredibly easy to travel in Europe. In fact, I've travelled the whole way around Europe. I've had no trouble with language in any of these countries because I had the one essential word in French, gracias.
We had three main bases. We had one in Paris and shot in Paris and around Paris, and then we were in Luberon and shot in and around there, and then we were in Nice and shot all around there. And interestingly, actually, we had a 50-50 Anglo-French crew, and it was completely harmonious. And I think they had a great time making it.
When we went to the Arc de Triomphe, and when there was a bus coming along, and we heard the Chinese people open the windows, and they were like, Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean.
All over the place is Mr. Bean, or Monsieur Bean.
The key to it was seeing Bean sort of, interact with a culture which is not his own. Very often in the TV pieces he would be put into an unfamiliar situation. Now he's in an unfamiliar country.
It's the road movie aspect of it has been slightly tricky to manage, but when, instead of having to supplement with stunt people, he does his own stuff, so we did manage to go straight up the Avenue Charles de Gaulle, which was a bit like kind of being there shot as he approached the Arc de Triomphe. We weren't allowed to go straight across the road leading up to the Arc de Triomphe because they said it would incite other people to do the same thing.
When I whinge about the work and the responsibility of filming this movie, and then you say that your three locations are Paris, Provence and the Côte d'Azur, then people tend to be cynical. But I'm afraid no matter how beautiful the scenery or lovely the weather, it's the business of making a movie I think is tricky.
It's really hot. But I don't have to complain because Bean has a real suit, really hot all the time, even on the beach. He's gonna wear his suit, so I don't have to complain because I'm lucky. You see, I have my little green dress.
Actually, I found it surprisingly bearable. Almost the biggest problem was keeping the sun off my skin. We wanted Mr. Bean to have a slightly pasty look throughout it. So almost the biggest problem I had was I had to hold an umbrella and keep the sun off me at all times.
Here we are in a place called Cavaillon, home of the melon, and the station we call St. Cavo for the film. We're in a real station, so there's lots of trains that go by all day long, which is fun when we're shooting. And this is the point where Stepan and Bean forge a reluctant bond, if you like.
When two people are sat on a bench and they don't talk to each other and you have to convey a story, it is a much more time-consuming and money-consuming exercise.
Visual comedy is very hard to achieve simply because every gesture and every piece of movement has to feel organic, fluid, considered, with the added requirement of being funny. And in the past, where you saw people like Chaplin and Keaton do silent comedy, they would do hundreds and hundreds of takes of their routines. And in fact, although we do spend quite a lot of time doing it, it's probably quite rapid in comparison.
Action!
France is a very, very big country with a relatively small population for its landmass, and there are many, many big and spectacular and beautiful vistas which we have tried to capture. Some extraordinary constructions, some extraordinary architecture, some great landscapes in particular. I think we've been trying to capitalize on, because there is something inherently funny about this small figure of Mr. Bean set in this vast context.
Scale was something we wanted to embrace for the film, so that it had that sort of that size. And one of the things you do see is Bean in space, and I think that's very strong. I mean, because Rowan is such a good physical performer, I think that's something that is very strong in the film, that you see his full figure within a larger context.
I think in cinema, when you're blessed with a big landscape, to have a little figure being funny in a big space, gives your film the scale it should have. When you're backed with this beautiful Provençal landscape and the sun's shining, and there's great scope for you to place your figure in such a way that you can exploit this huge space.
Here we are in Cavaillon again. We were at the railway station. Now this is doubling for a town in southern France where Bean goes into various music cues that come via the music stall over there. And there's no money received by Bean for all his efforts dancing to all these tunes. And then Puccini comes on, Babino Caro, and money just flies into their handkerchief.
The best thing I like about filming is just to be on the camera. It's just really great to see the camera.
Bang on the money.
Wow! John!
Take 5.
It wasn't particularly inspired by one of the French comedian Jacques Tati's most famous movies called A Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, because in many ways the essence of Monsieur Hulot's Holiday was that he was travelling for 5 minutes and was on the beach for an hour and a half in terms of the film's running time, whereas we travel for an hour and a half and then we're on the beach for 5 minutes. So it's I think it's an inverse of that film, if it's anything.
There's a Tati homage in my mind in the cycling moment where Bean overtakes the peloton, and he's cycling up, and then you go to cut to the wide shot and he's down like that. And for me, that's very reminiscent of that the Tati film where he plays the postman, the Jour de Fête.
What we're doing today is a chase sequence involving Mr. Bean and a chicken. Unfortunately, the chicken has been put on a chicken truck, and Bean snabbed someone's bike and pedals after it. And the reason you see all of this paraphernalia behind me is because we have to do certain shots which involve Bean catching a lift on a jeep to make him go a bit faster, so he can actually catch up with the chicken truck. And so all of these rigs you see are here purely for fractional moments of action, i.e. catching hold of the jeep brakes, we see Bean lurch forward, and it only takes us 3 or 4 days to achieve the 30 seconds we need.
Action!
I lived in France for a long time, so the France that I felt should be portrayed was a very modern France. France which is, it has very slick trains, it's extremely urbanized, and one of the things that we talked about a lot was the idea that Bean might have a rather cliched idea of what France consisted of, which perhaps he sees for the first time he sees in the commercial.
What are we doing here in the middle of Provence, in this beautiful place? Well, we're currently finding Bean waking up in a hay cart, and he sees this beatific Provençal scene, not unlike a Manon de Sauce movie. He's amazed, and suddenly, out of nowhere, comes a tank and several Nazis.
Iped is the moment where Bean wakes up and realises that he's in France as he imagined it to be, which is a romantic English notion of France, and it turns out to be a 1940s film set. So we've found a rather beautiful village and built a cafe down one side of what was a 3-sided square, so that the tank can roll in and blow the front off it.
Where's my explosion?
Blowing up a building means you have to make sure no one else gets blown up. And so all the old people that are there playing accordions and drinking pastis had to be replaced by young fit men that could take a few hits for some material. So when they crouch down, it's a lot of young fit stuntmen. When they come back up again, they're old and beautiful.
You play with your life, huh?
The piece that we blow up is made of totally soft material. So that bit has to be inserted, and it's made of cork and plaster without any binding, so it doesn't form chips, and all the timber is balsa. And then it's treated pretty much in the ordinary way, and then the effects guys hit it with a charge and a huge woof of air, which gives it the effect of being blown to smithereens.
3, 2, 1.
Bean has a video camera and part of the narrative of the film is told through the images that Bean takes on his video camera. Then there's our main film, which we're seeing the whole thing through, and the two things meet at the end in a cinematic festival which takes place in Cannes. And we shot second unit during the festival and grabbed some stuff on the red carpet, and the Cannes authorities were very graceful in allowing us to do that.
Cannes is really like, there's so many people come here on holidays, so there's always a lot of people. During the festival it's like 100% more, but there's always a lot of people. It's always sunny, the sea is always here, it's beautiful, and yeah, no, it's cool to be here.
It was a very hectic schedule, it was a very hectic bit of shooting, but I think the results are good. I think it's a very nice film to watch. I think it's very beautiful.
I'm very glad that we've made a pure version of it, you know, because I think that the character warranted it, and in a funny way, the first film, although it had great merits and all the rest of it, didn't give it the purity that the character deserved.
We're in Cannes to shoot the final sequence. It all culminates in the screening of my film at the Cannes Film Festival.
Cannes and the festival were very good to us, actually, and I hope the film does good for them.
We were given permission by Gilles Jacob, the president of the festival, to use an actual premiere of another film to put Emma Ducombe, Willem Dafoe and Carol Roden and Max, who plays Stefan, onto the red carpet. It was very good of them to do that. I don't think they've ever done that before. So he turns this way, Carson, off we go.
Gilles Jacob, who runs the festival, was enchanting, and he likes the idea of Bean and the character and the films and working title. So he was incredibly welcoming, and they've helped in every single way they possibly could. Just to do a tiny bit of a sequence at the base of the red carpet, where we cheekily just sort of jumped on the back of a Portuguese film.
I think Rowan felt, well, if you're going to have a film festival, and what film festival do most people know about, then it would only be Cannes.
We did feel it was important to be there doing the real thing. Indeed, the Cannes Festival wanted it to be the real thing, because always the worry for them is if we go to, to another seaside town, it wouldn't be accurate, which it could not be 100% accurate.
And it was really exciting because nobody really knew that we were shooting a movie, and people know me a little in France, so they were saying, "Hey, Emma," and I was like, "Oh no, I'm Sabine."
Willem just has come into it so generously and openly, and we gave him a girlfriend who was about 10 feet higher than he was to walk up the red carpet.
We had 45 minutes to do our thing, and we couldn't use Rowan. So Rowan was a double in the car, but we really wanted to grab some explanatory shots of them going up the red carpet effectively. But the real story is behind the Palais, which is where we are now. And what's happened is that their fiendish plan to go in disguise has failed, and so they're fashioning a plan even as we speak to get past the officialdom, which will fail, of course, and they finally do get in. They get in mainly by running in.
I don't think that the authorities in Cannes were remotely worried that we were going to spoil their reputation or their image. It was a little bit satirical, about the sort of nonsense of it and the pretentiousness of some of the film product that is seen there, and we have some jokes about that towards the end, but they're extremely oblique and extremely gentle. So they were happy to have us there. And we were very happy to be there, and it was great in particular to be in their main auditorium, shooting the scenes that we shoot there. What you see is the real deal.
This is the main auditorium in the Palais. Bean has found his way in here to try and connect Stefan back to his parents, and is dressed as a woman at this stage, which is quite fantastic, actually.
Because my scene.
The great silent comedians, for me, always played with the idea of cinema. And so I thought, if we're going to set it in the 21st century and somebody goes on holiday, what do they take? They take a camera with them, but, in this day and age, it'll be a digital camera.
You are now in the arms of another.
You can't go anywhere now on holiday for a weekend, a day out, We've all got the camcorder going, and it seemed to be a fun way to get into sort of Bean's mind, that he's both on this journey and he's recording this journey. And then, because you're going to the south of France, that seemed to be a wonderful opportunity for one of those sort of high conceit concoctions where basically Mr. Bean's holiday video ends up on the screen in Cannes. And you work the steps for that to work out, and I think it works very well, that it's gloriously absurd, but it sort of works, and it has that sort of emotional payoff at the end.
One of the most complex scenes is we're taking over, and hopefully not opening us up to a sort of general municipal disaster, but we've taken over the equivalent of 3 public beaches on the Croisette, where we'll be filming for 2 days the final sequence.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
There are very simple stages of child development, and I used that when I first wrote the story, the idea of different events happening and each one taking him a little step further down the road to some sort of emotional development by the end. And he has actually got close to the boy who's really annoying at the beginning, by the end becomes a real friend, the girl, who he doesn't really seem to fancy. And yet there is some sort of bond that happens between him and the girl. And so you get to a point that all of these fictions come together, and he manages to solve everything, which allows this moment of release where he arrives on the beach and he's finally got there. And having finally got there, earned a moment where everyone can break into song together in the most absurd way.
It's a light story, but it has heart.
It is a kickback to the great days of silent cinema.
Like you say, from 7 to 77?
To me, it's a classical comedy movie.
One day people will look back and go, that's really special.
Everybody knows Barra, and he's a complete gentleman, and that all works on that level. And that's very encouraging.
In a film that he's headlining, if you put him in it, you're going to go out and do really decent business.
He's absolutely unique as a performer.
It's really hard not to laugh, and yeah, he's a great person. I really like him.
When I was maybe 15 or 16, my dad used to bring me back the tapes of Bean. It doesn't exist in France at this period, and I was really mad about it.
I remember very well seeing those Black Adders and just loving Rowan and thinking how brilliant he was. So you get a little titillated to think that you're going to be working in the same movie with him.
He's been at it a pretty long time, and all of that time he's been working on making people laugh, and he's very serious about it.
No.
I first met him and saw him work in the early 80s, and I was mesmerized by his stage work, because he was one of those performers who could literally go on stage and nothing would happen, and you would be completely entranced, roaring with laughter, but you didn't know what he was doing. You had no idea what the hell he was doing. He would just stand there and he would make you laugh.
He appears to be made out of several degrees of rubber, and yet you do see the character behind everything. It's not for its own sake.
I was amazed the first time I saw him for rehearsals. It was like this elegant gentleman, English guy, really elegant, really kind and nice, and then when we just started to rehearse, just his face was changing, his body was changing, the whole character was appearing. It was really like two people in one,
It's extraordinary because when we were rehearsing, obviously you sort of get to know him more as Rowan, and then the sort of move into Mr. Bean, I was less used to it, and suddenly seeing him in costume was quite a shock. There he was doing it, and it's a complete change. It's a complete takeover by a personality. It's incredibly impressive.
A kind of ease comes over him, which is wonderful, and because that's what we all want.
I haven't found it difficult after the passage of time in finding him again and understanding him and knowing how he would behave in any given situation. I think I'm pretty familiar, but I still find the business of shooting and acting him quite stressful. It's the very singular nature of the character and the fact that he is at the center of the film. I mean, obviously, but I mean, to be in virtually every shot of every day of the shooting is, I find, quite challenging.
I think he's lost about a stone while we've been shooting, actually, and he certainly commented the other day that he was tireder than he'd ever been at the end of a shoot because it was very physically exacting on him.
We need to have gears so that I can alter the relationship between the pedal speed and the wheel speed.
He's very meticulous, he really works details. He's a real stickler about, of course, about timing. So he's always on himself and he's always on other people too, because, you know, it's all really hung on this Bean character. And although there's a world that he enters into, and I'm part of that world, the tone of the film and obviously the whole feeling of the film comes from that character he knows so well.
He has a very high quality threshold. He won't go out to work on something unless he's pretty sure of the content and all the rest of it. And then when you're actually shooting, he has a very, very high quality threshold. And I actually think in this movie he's given one of the better performances that I've seen. It was a good. Simon had spent a lot of time working it out of him in rehearsal, and actually then Steve picked up that baton very much in terms of directing on the set.
Why don't I try quickly? I should come in and then get back. And it means I'll get out on the roadside.
Yeah.
The reality of working with Rowan is that he is very tough on himself, and he's very tough about playing a very fine equation, I think, between highly considered action and the desire for that to feel completely spontaneous. And that illusion is something that is hard to achieve, and something that is well worth trying to achieve.
He'll remember the takes as well, so that when he's in the cutting room, you know, so, you know, I'm pretty sure in the 6th one I did this at this point, and in the 10th one I did this at this point, and all the rest of it. And so, you know, it's the same old thing, it's the attention to detail.
For me, it's like a Charlie Chaplin, you know. I'm really happy to look at him working and improvising, and he's so amazing, really. He's really, really amazing. He's really a great actor.
I learned a lot from him. It's a great chance to learn a lot. It's a great experience.
If there was one quality which I would say characterises Rowan's uniqueness, it is the quality of his imagination as a performer. He suddenly sees a way of reacting to something which is nobody else might see, just because he's in the situation and he's in the character, and he then starts to play with it. He's constantly playing and inventing.
There's very few people who are prepared to do pratfalls and bump into lampposts and all the rest of it, and Rowan's never too proud to do that.
He is a perfectionist, he's scrupulous, and in almost every frame is perhaps the funniest man I've ever worked with.
Gracias.